God is talking to me about something that he's doing right now that is very similar to what he was doing when he was blowing the trumpets. He's speaking to me in a way that's very similar to the way that he was speaking to me as he was blowing the trumpets and was revealing that to me. There is a transition happening right now. He blew those trumpets, or the angels blew the trumpets. People have had an opportunity to listen. They've had an opportunity to return to him. And there's something he's showing me this morning, because he started talking with me about this, and I did what I do, which is I let him know, okay, you have said to me that you will give me 2 witnesses anytime that you're talking to me, anytime that I think I'm hearing something from you. So show me now that what I think I'm hearing is true. I want to show you where he brought me. Then I'm going to explain to you what he's been telling me. Ezekiel 24. In the 9th year, in the 10th month, on the 10th day, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, record this date, this very date, because the king of Babylon has laid siege to Jerusalem this very day. This is the first thing that he is showing me. He's talked to me about the 10th day of the 10th month, and God does not give me dates. That's not something that he does. He's only done that a couple times, and it wasn't like he was saying, this is going to happen on this date. He was directing my attention to a particular date to help me to understand what was being set in motion. But I want you to pay attention to this, because nowhere in the Bible does God say, record this date. This is the only place that he says this, and this date is mentioned several times in the Bible for good reason. I'm going to show you why. Son of man, record this date, this very date, because the king of Babylon, look at what is happening on this date. The king of Babylon has laid siege to Jerusalem this very day. Tell this rebellious people a parable and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Before I go into the parable, I want you to pay attention to the date, and I want you to pay attention to what's happening on that date. The king of Babylon has laid siege to Jerusalem this very day. What's going to happen in the end, guys? The king of Babylon will lay siege to Jerusalem. And I want to show you, based on what we've been discerning together, based on the day that I didn't realize I was being anointed, but I talked about it on a video on May 18th. I did not realize what was happening, but I described what God was doing with me, and he didn't reveal to me until a year later what he had done in 2022. He had told me that he would be anointing his witnesses on Pentecost 2022. We later discovered that what is being pitched to us on Google as Pentecost by counterfeit Judaism and counterfeit Christianity is not in fact Pentecost. We know that for certain based on the new moon. We know that for certain because they've added to the calendars. They haven't been tracking with what God established whatsoever. So we had to come together as a church, and we had to discern this. And part of the way that we discerned it, although they discerned it in their own ways with God, I discerned based on what God told me and what he did in 2022. Based on that date, the witnesses will be done testifying on October 9th, 2025. That will mark the 1,260 days. October 30th begins the persecution and death of the witnesses, the 10 days of being jailed. The evening of November 1st, because remember that God's days begin in the evening, they don't begin in the morning. November 1st to the evening of November 2nd is the 10th day of the 10th month. When in Ezekiel 24, we understand that Babylon, the king of Babylon, lays siege to Jerusalem. When the hedge of protection is removed and Babylon invades Israel. Who's Israel? Israel are his people. Israel is not a physical land. That is the day when the reign of the Antichrist will begin. And this date is so important, in fact, that it is listed in the Word as the day that Babylon, the king of Babylon, lays siege to Jerusalem. It is mentioned in 2 Kings 25:1, Jeremiah 52:4, Ezekiel 24:1, which we just read. So it is mentioned 3 times in the Bible as the day that Babylon, the king of Babylon, laid siege to Jerusalem. Just so happens that that's exactly what is described in Revelation and throughout the Bible, that Babylon will lay siege to Jerusalem. Now, I want to be careful here to tell you that I'm not just putting a puzzle piece together. God's leading me to this. So this isn't about putting puzzle pieces together like people like Jonathan Cahn try to do to form some sort of a narrative. God is leading me to this. And it lines up with the other things that he has revealed to me and to the body. Verse 3, tell this rebellious people a parable and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Put on the cooking pot, put it on and pour water into it. Put into it the pieces of meat, all the choice pieces, the leg and the shoulder. Fill it with the best of these bones. Take the pick of the flock. Pile wood beneath it for the bones. Bring it to a boil and cook the bones in it. For this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the city of bloodshed, the pot now encrusted, whose deposits will not go away. Take the meat out piece by piece in whatever order it comes. For the blood she shed is in her midst. She poured it on the bare rock. She did not pour it on the ground where the dust would cover it. To stir up wrath and take revenge, I put her blood on the bare rock so that it would not be covered. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the city of bloodshed. I too will pile the wood high, so heap on the wood and kindle the fire. Cook the meat well, mixing in the spices, and let the bones be charred. Then set the empty pot on the coals till it becomes hot and its copper glows, so that its impurities may be melted and its deposits burned away. It has frustrated all efforts. Its heavy deposit, has not been removed, not even by fire. Now your impurity is lewdness. Okay, look at what has happened. He has tried to cleanse them. He has tried to cleanse. But he's saying it has frustrated all efforts. Its heavy deposit has not been removed, not even by fire. Then he goes on to say, now your impurity is lewdness, because I tried to cleanse you, but you would not be cleansed from your impurity. You will not be clean again until my wrath against you has subsided. I, the Lord, have spoken. The time has come for me to act. I will not hold back. I will not have pity, nor will I relent. You will be judged according to your conduct and your actions, declares the sovereign Lord. Now here's the statement that he's drawing my attention to. Because I tried to cleanse you, you would not be cleansed, but you would not be cleansed from your impurity. You will not be clean again until my wrath against you has subsided. As God has revealed certain things, he's started to break down some stratification and make us realize, okay, there's a little more detail here that needs to be attended to. God is not talking about counterfeit Christianity. He's not talking about them, because they will receive the mark of the beast and they will be thrown into the lake of burning sulfur. God is talking about the remnant that's going to be saved. But within that remnant, there are people who have been receiving this, who have been corrected, who have listened and not loathed discipline. They have not been stupid. Now listen to what he says. You will not be clean again until my wrath against you has subsided. Guess what? His wrath against you does not subside until after the 45 days have ended. These are those who will be here that whole time for those 45 days. And I believe that decision has been made. I believe that the cutoff has occurred and that is what we've been seeing as a body. That is what I'm hearing. How many people are here right now working on their stuff, not being stupid, listening, being disciplined? How many people, guys? I count about 8 on our calls. Not a lot. About 8 who consistently show up. And what I've been taking up with him this morning is the disgust that I feel. The utter disgust that I feel. And now I understand why God uses certain language or why he established certain concepts, right? Because I literally don't even know how to explain it any more than to say this disgusts me worse than dung. It makes me more sick than dung that I have given of my money, my time, my resources, my heart, my property, my home. Everything that I have given for free, taking the cost on myself, speaking what God tells me to speak, despite retaliation, despite slander, despite gaslighting and lying to my face. These people who are doing these things should only hope that they will be able to be here during that 45 days and that they might go up in the resurrection. And I imagine they'll be here during that 45 days wondering if they'll make it because of the utter wickedness in their hearts that they would cause their families, the body, God, his house, to bear the brunt of their lying hearts. All that time that they were hiding in corners, acting like nobody sees me. I can just pretend that I'm doing this work. It affected every single one of us. It has affected us that these people have been lying this entire time. And most importantly, it has affected God because they tried to hide out in his body and join him with a prostitute. And I feel thoroughly disgusted, and I know that that's coming from the Holy Spirit. It is not my own disgust. It is coming from God. That these people are so wicked that they have not cared that everyone else has been bearing the brunt of their dishonesty. Spouses, you can't live like that and expect it not to affect your children and your spouse. And so if you don't care about how you affect your children and your spouse and your in-laws and everybody else who's connected to you, don't expect God to care about you. You have been given opportunities. I know people who've had dreams about living during that time don't even realize that they're having dreams about living during that time. They don't have the sense to perceive that as a warning, and they will indeed live during that time without the spouse, without the children that they didn't care enough about to correct their ways, to return to God so that their families were not affected by their evil, being given everything by God's servants for free, and then seeing God's servants suffering, and it doesn't occur to them that they have any obligation. It's not as though God needs them to do anything, but the fact that that is not in their heart tells me that the love of God is not in them. One of these, having said 3 years ago, oh, if God gave me wealth, I would just go and give it to the poor. Liar. What an incredible liar. They don't even give to the one who's given to them. No obligation whatsoever. God has given you guys opportunities to do what he's commanded you to do. He doesn't need you to do anything because he will take care of his servants. He will be faithful to those who've been faithful to him. But those who don't do these things, you are deceiving yourselves. You have utterly deceived yourself. And so if you are here during that 45 days, being purified, made spotless, and refined during the time that Jesus said is going to be the worst time the world has ever seen. And if you make it in the resurrection, you will have gotten in by the skin of your teeth, people. You had better hear this message and take it seriously. You have a covenant that you are required to fulfill. Your marriage, your earthly marriage to your spouse, has been given to you in order to understand the larger covenant. If you don't think so much of that smaller covenant that is only in this earth, that only exists in this life, but will not continue in the next life after the resurrection, if you don't even know that you have this covenant with your spouse and that you are required to protect your spouse and your children from evil being in your heart, you can't even live out the smaller trust that God has given you to take care of what he placed in your care, you are not going to make it. You have no sense to even discern that. How can you make it? How can you say that you're his? You are not his based on that fruit. There are those who are going to enter in to the Antichrist reign and they will be killed. And they will not endure that 45 days. Let's read about them. Revelation 12. Verse 13, now the dragon has already been hurled down. Satan has already lost his place in heaven because the witnesses completed their testifying. Now he's been hurled to the earth. He pursues the woman, the church. He imprisons the witnesses. Notice that it's not the death of the witnesses that is what triumphs over the devil. It is their testimony, and they knew that they were going to die. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Now he's given power to imprison them for 10 days and kill them. This is the time of which I'm telling you, the 10th day of the 10th month. It has lined up perfectly, guys, with the date that we had discerned. What did God say? I'm going to remove your hedge of protection. Babylon will lay siege to Israel. So the dragon sees he's been hurled to the earth. He pursues the woman who'd given birth to the male child, who is Christ. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle so she might fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time out of the serpent's rage. Then from his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with the torrent. But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. Now there's a separation between the woman and the rest of God's offspring. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep God's commands and hold fast to their testimony about Jesus. These are those who are going to be here for that 45 days, the time that is worse than anything this world has ever seen. That is a time of God's wrath, and it'll be coming against those who have not been fulfilling their covenant. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you haven't been fulfilling your covenant to your children or to your wife or your husband by protecting them from the evil in your heart, you'll be here, and you would better hope that you are going up in the resurrection. You would better hope that right now you go and pray and you ask God to turn your heart to do the things that you have not been willing to do, because this will be you. The cutoff for that decision has come. That's what I am hearing from God today. And I understand, and I think the body would probably understand with everything that they have been through in the last few months, everything that they have seen, the wickedness that they have seen, hiding out in the dark spaces of this temple, in those dark corners, and once the light got shined on them, they cowered, slandered, lied, gaslighted, went and attacked their friends, went and attacked those who are actually keeping their covenant with God in order to justify their own wicked witchcraft. That's what we've been seeing in the last few months. So those of you in the assembly, do you understand why God's doing this? Those of you who've been seeing this, do you understand? Is God righteous or is he not? There's a judgment coming, guys. There is a judgment coming, and you need to understand why. And you need to understand why certain people are going to be brought low. You should be able to understand it right now, because God's people have been suffering, and it's not right for the righteous to be punished on behalf of the wicked any longer. The body has been bearing the brunt of those liars. My family had to bear the brunt of a liar. It affects all of us, and they don't care. They bring down the body and the family and his house, his name, his cause, his reputation, his reason, his image. We have suffered long enough for those who don't care. So they will deal with the bed they've made. And you need to understand that you are to have nothing to do with such people. Do you understand that when people are cast out of the camp, they are cast out of the camp? They don't have a foot in. They don't get to visit. They don't get to hang out secretly on Sabbath because they're too cowardly to do what is required to actually be there. Do not be putting people on the phone who are not doing what they're required to do to be in the body. You do not defile the body like that. They need to go deal with what they need to deal with in order to fully participate. God does not have a gray area group. It's black and white, guys. And I understand the world likes to tell you, oh, you're thinking in black and white terms. Listen, God's laws are black and white. You are either in or you're out, period. You get cast out of the camp when you are demonstrating that you're not healing, when you are demonstrating that you're not his, when you don't bear the fruit. We cannot operate God's house by the rules of the world, by the definitions of the world regarding love and kindness. This is what God established. This is what we are to obey. We don't put our own spin in it. When people are allowed to hang out and not do the work, they bring down the body. They bring down the family, the house, God's name. This is why counterfeit Christianity became counterfeit Christianity, because they did not hold up God's laws and his truth. We are not allowed to do this, and if we start doing it, we'll be cast out too. Please understand that you do no one any favors by allowing them to secretly engage. It is idolatry, it is wrong, it defiles the church, and you are prohibiting, preventing God's consequences on people who choose not to do the work, not to fulfill the entire covenant. You are behaving in idolatry when you do that. You need to be honest, straightforward, direct with those people, because there is not a lot of time for them to return to God before that fifth trumpet blows. No one returns after. So they need to experience severe consequences so that they will be motivated to fulfill the entire covenant. Do not seduce people to hell. or you will be held accountable not only for yourself, but for them as well. They will die for their sin, but their blood will be on your head. Do you understand what that means? You'll be held accountable for murder. Please discern what I've said. Ask God if this is true. I know it's true, but you need to know that it's true. And then you need to ask him what is required of you right now.